I think the other thing is we have to understand, as we talked about earlier, the younger ones, they're less likely to finish first time. They love the ball, they want to stay on the ball, they probably need to get closer to the goal to score, whereas older ones will be able to shoot from further away because they're more powerful, as we talked about, and they're probably more likely to get an assist.
It's also a mindset thing for the coach. So I'll be careful when I say this because you're right, health and safety is important, so I'll come on to that. But a coach needs to embrace the chaos. Let's be honest, especially if you work with 5v5, 7v7, under 7s up to under 10s. It is organised chaos, isn't it? It's like bees round honey. We've got to be able to embrace that a little bit and learn to cope with it as adults, which I think we sometimes struggle with. So I think that's one thing. It's okay for it to be chaotic. But in the shooting world, a good finishing session for me should have lots of opportunities to shoot, and Parks has just talked through some really good examples of how you might do that linked to your environment. But I think about if you've got players in a practice who are waiting from a health and safety point of view, don't stick them next to the goal. You see a lot of players lent up against the goal waiting to come on as maybe a defender. Well, that's a big no-no, because if your shooting's anything like mine, 7 out of 10 of them will probably miss, and that's an unofficial stat, by the way. But last thing you want to do is take a shot and hit a teammate. So as the coach, think, right, where am I positioning the waiting player? Or we prefer the term resting player because they're resting for a reason, so that when they come on, they can play to their maximum. And they're also resting and going, I'm looking. So when a lot of coaches do finishing sessions, especially if they're working lower on the spectrum of who want high repetition, there might be an element of you're just going to wait there, you're going to have a go in a second. So just make sure they're waiting in an appropriate place, but also they feel engaged. So you might set some little, you're waiting there for 5 seconds. In that 5 seconds, what can you learn about your mate? So you might give that feedback to your mate. What do you like about his shooting? What maybe one bit of advice have you got? But the final thing I'd say on it is have some fun with it. So Parks and I were talking about what games would we like to take part in as young players. But I'm 39, I still want to be motivated, I still want to enjoy and have fun, and we're talking about the spirit of football at the moment. And there's one game, I worked on an FA initiative a few years ago, and it wasn't my game that I created, but a good coach is a thief, so I pinched it, and it's called 5 Goals 5 Ways. So 5 of my mates will play 5 of Parks' mates. We're going to play a game, who can score a left, right, header, volley, nutmeg, the quickest. When we score it, we're going to run over to the whiteboard, and if I've scored the left foot, I'm going to sign Matt Jones, because let's be honest, who doesn't like to work on their autograph? And then as that's happening, Parksy can retrieve the ball and try and attack. And momentarily we're down to 4 players, so it's a 5v4, overload for him, underload for me. But it's the thrill of trying to score 5 goals quicker than the other team, but also your name goes up in lights. And there's so many things you can do with that. You could change the 5 goals, the players could pick the goals, you could allow whoever sets up a goal to put a signature as well. So 2 players go off, I set up a mate, so we both sign it, so it's a 5v3. So I think have fun with it and make sure that you're putting on practices that you would want to take part in as a player yourself.
I think the other thing is we have to understand, as we talked about earlier, the younger ones, they're less likely to finish first time. They love the ball, they want to stay on the ball, they probably need to get closer to the goal to score, whereas older ones will be able to shoot from further away because they're more powerful, as we talked about, and they're probably more likely to get an assist to finish off a first time finish or less touches. So age and stage, that would be where I'd go. Recognise that younger ones need to get close to the goal. They're probably going to have more touches in the lead up. Older ones, less touches to finish, because again, back to stats, what is it, 60% of goals are scored first time finish, I think. And again, 80% of goals are scored by an assist or with an assist. So at that end of the game, we need the practices to look like that, but recognise that youngers, we don't want them to be finishing first time, because that's not necessarily what they want. But get close to the goal, use the penalty area as a reference point.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so if we go through that process of younger players need to manage their body before they can manage the ball, manage the decision. So build up the layers of complexity. So with younger players, you might start with, it was mentioned earlier around, make the facility work for you, see the opportunity that the facility has. So you might have 8 little groups of pairs, taking it in turns, shooting into a goal, a target. Who doesn't like to knock a coconut off when you go to the fun fair. So you're giving them that target to shoot, high repetition, lots of opportunities to have a go. You're not shooting in front of your mates, which again I think is a big put off for some players when they are in those long lines and all eyes are on them and 9 of their peers are watching them and they shoot and they miss, God forbid. You know, they're only 7 years old, for a bit of context on that one, but even a 14-year-old would be crushed if they missed a shot in a training environment in front of their mates because they're never going to live it down. So I think we have that duty to protect them a little bit in the way that we structure our practices. But then you might move it on to lots of 1v1s, lots of 2v2s, you know, make the small numbers work for you. Don't feel that you've got to, I'm going to steal one of Pete Sturge's lines now, don't rush them to the wrong finish line of giving them the 11v11 game before they're ready for it. That said, the challenge every coach has got is kids want to play games. So go back to the game I gave earlier, the 5 goals, 5 ways. Think about smart and creative ways that might structure the session. So Parksy's mentioned the stats there about shooting from close range, from middle distances, from long distances. You might have some really good scoring and reward systems of, okay, well tonight, because we know that the younger players can't shoot from distance, we're going to reward as close to the goal, you're going to get 5 points for a goal. And try and take as many touches as you want, shoot when you're ready. So we're encouraging them to shoot on their terms as opposed to asking them to shoot 1 touch from distance, which they're not physically or technically, tactically capable of yet. And I don't mean to pigeonhole players. And then you might flip it on its head as you work with older players. They're used to more interference, opposition. They're used to shooting from bigger distances. They've got more physical capacity. So yeah, I think it's just understanding that age and stage of your players and making sure your practices meet their needs, but without robbing them of the game, which is us versus them. Let's enjoy the spirit of it.
Yeah, I think the competition is really important, and even if you do have little groups that we've talked about doing finishing, you can still make that competitive, which team's going to score 10 first, and do it that way if you can't get them into a game. A couple more things that you made me think of actually. One was it might be unopposed at the younger ages, so building confidence. It's okay to have 1v the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't, because if we go straight to 1v1s and we're working on finishing and they can't get round that player, then they never get a chance to take the shot. So it's understanding that. But then at the other end of the scale, or the age, is we talked earlier about underloaded. So at the top end, we know that just take the front 3 playing against the back 4, you're underloaded. And so if you scale that back, how often do we do practices where finishing has to take place when you've got less than the opposition? So just when your players are ready for that, and it might mean less success, but if we never give them that opportunity, come to a match day and we can't understand why we can't score. We did it great in training, yeah, but in training it was either matched up or we had more. And now today we've got less, so no wonder we can't do it. So there's just a couple of things I added to.
And I think a good tip for the coach to be able to sell that to the players. Let's say they're playing 11v11 and the team you're coaching with is playing goalkeeper 4-2-3-1, so they've got a lone centre forward and they're playing against a back 4. So that's 4 plus 1, unit for unit, if you're with me. If you include the goalkeeper, that's 5v1. Now in games, and there's a number of different contributing factors to this, but just go with me for a second, is in games, the striker might have got frustrated that they're not getting the ball much. When they do, they're not getting their shots off because they're heavily outnumbered. But if in training, we're putting on practices where that centre forward has 3 mates and they're playing against 1 defender, we're almost setting that player up to fail because we're not exposing them to the environment. So I think we have to make sure that when we're explaining it to players, this is why we're doing it tonight. We're going to play you tonight, you're going to play a 1v1, then you're going to play a 1v2, so you're going to go up against 2, then you're going to play a 1v3. They might look at you and go, why are you setting me up to fail? Well, actually, we're testing your resilience because on a game day, how many defenders would they have? Oh, they'd have 4, coach. Right, and how many is a review? There's 1. Now, I know we need your mates to come and support you, and we're going to work on that, but you also need to get your head around there's going to be times in the game when you are outnumbered. So let's get good at dealing with that. And we know that it's one of the hardest things to replicate, isn't it? The match day environment at a training field. Because when you're playing in front of, whether it's one man and his dog, or younger age groups, you're playing in front of your parents, your mates' parents, that's a very difficult thing to deal with psychologically. So I think try and recreate that in your training where you can. Let's sometimes invite some of the parents closer to it, especially in those younger age groups. Let's not push them away. Let's invite them in, involve them a little bit, make sure that the messages that they're giving to their sons and daughters pre, during and post game are supportive around some of that psychological development of it's okay for them to shoot and miss. Actually, the fact they were in a good position, praise that for us. So I think, yes, some subtle education there, certainly with the younger age groups and some parents who mean well, of course they do, but maybe need a little bit of support around how they're helping their players post, during and pre-game.
For me, keep the score and keep a time on games. So if you add that element of competition, if it's a 4-minute game and we're keeping the score and there's a minute left, you can guarantee if in futsal world this is, I would shout out, because it's a stop clock in futsal. So we might play a 4-minute game, but the last 30 seconds I might shout out as a stopped clock to 30 seconds, so every time it goes out. And you can guarantee in that 30 seconds there is always a goal when, just as a coach, you hype it up and go 30, 29. No, it lifts automatically and it will go, and someone will have a chance and they'll miss, and then quick down the other end, and it just creates that element of this matters. Scoring now matters, which is really the only way you can practice being composed, is when it matters, and you're trying to be composed when it matters. So keep score, play to short games, and if you play short games, you get that every 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you play a 10-minute game, you don't get it to the last 30 seconds of a 10-minute game.